Tallinn, Estonia, Colombia, France, and Luxembourg. What do all of these cities have in common? They offer free transit. Approximately 100 cities worldwide offer a free fare policy. So with so many Montrealers utilizing transit in Montreal, why is it not free in our metropolis? Before we get into free transit, let's acknowledge the recent election. This past weekend, Mayor Valérie Plante of Projet Montreal won her second term by 52%. So what are some of the promises on transit that were filled and ignored in her last term? And what are some of the promises for this term? Projet Montreal promised metro expansions. These expansions would be on the Blue Line, as well as the creation of a Pink Line, which would run from Lachine through downtown Montreal to Montreal North. 300 buses would be added to the STM network. All public transit buses would be fully electric by 2025. There would be free transit for seniors and children, as well as low-income folks would receive 40% off monthly passes. Transit has not been made free for seniors. Seniors instead have received a reduction on monthly passes. They will now pay $27 for monthly passes. This is a 50% reduction, which started on July 1st. Children under 12 now children under 12 now ride for free. Monthly passes have increased by 2%, from $88.50 to $90.50 starting on July 1st. Single ride fares have stayed at $3.50.
Sorry, Savannah, could you put your hair like this, the other side?
So what are some new promises? Seniors will ride for free by 2023, according to Projet Montreal. Plante has once again promised to lower fare. She's also promised to present or complete the Pink Line in the next 500 days. In today's episode of Local 514, we'll be looking into transit in Montreal. I'm your host, Savannah Craig. Today, I'm joined by Vincent Obi-Legault, a student at Polytechnique researching public transit. Vincent, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. So can you tell me, are you skeptical of Projet Montreal's promises on lowering fares?
I am, sorry?
Are you skeptical on Projet Montreal's plans to lower fares?
Oh, yeah. I would say it's a plausible path to go there to lower the fare, but it's all come to financing. So the money has to come from somewhere. And if the provincial government don't want to make the transit free, Projet Montreal will have a lot of difficulty to accomplish these promises.
So what do you think of the current way that the transit system is run in Montreal? I understand that you have a few critiques, if you'd be willing to share some of them.
Mm-hmm. I think right now in the Montreal Metro and Montreal STM network for the bus is relatively fine if you compare it to North American city. I've traveled to a lot of North American city, and we're some of the best. But North America globally is not the best place for public transit, and we can see it mostly with the bus network. The bus network, once you leave the metro, it can be long. The bus have to keep being stuck in traffic, and there is long waiting time between many buses, and even more in the fringe of the city, not in the central core, but in the east part and the west part. It can be very long, and if you have to do a transfer between two bus lines, now it's really difficult because sometimes the bus are not doesn't come at the same time. So there's definitely a lot of things to improve with the bus network. And in the central networks, the central part of the city, another problem we have is overcrowding. So the bus have way too many people inside, and so there's a phenomenon called bus bushing. So the bus is getting full, and the next bus after them it reach, and so you're waiting here 20 minutes, and I'm sure it happened to you. and then suddenly 3 buses come at the same time. You know, why is it like this? It's because the first bus was way too full with way too many people, and you have to increase capacity. It's time to go for something better than bus at that time.
Yeah, I remember when I was a student taking the Sherbrooke bus from Vendôme, it was just constantly the same thing, and buses piling up and the line
Yeah.
winding around the metro stop. But I guess this is, you know, this issue has probably increased because of COVID, and there's a bit more, I guess, of a limitation of people being able to get on the bus at the same capacity as well.
I wouldn't say the problem came with COVID. It was there before, but it can get worse with COVID because something happens recently. The government is looking at maybe reducing the financing of the STM, the provincial government, because, you know, less people than before use the STM. Some people are scared of the COVID. They take their bike instead, or they take the car. So there's less people taking the income coming from the tickets are lowering, so the government is saying, oh, maybe we should reduce the service, remove some bus. So a big problem may come in the future because of this.
Okay, and along with these comments, has there been kind of any clarification that if, you know, ridership kind of ramps up when hopefully the pandemic dwindles, that the funding may come back, or was it just kind of this one-time statement by the local government?
There's no long-time plan. They just say that maybe they will cut financing because there's less ridership than before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know that your research is on the REM, which is a light metro rapid transit system. It's under construction in the Greater Montreal area. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yes, the REM is a project by the Caisse de dépôt and placement du Québec. So it's the pension fund from every single Quebecers. So they created like a private entity. We will build a sort of private metro line going further away in the suburbs than the regular metro. So at West Islands and Brossard. So this big network is being built currently, and the first train we will be able to ride the first train in 2022. So it's coming really fast in Brossard, especially, and this project, I think it's a good project because as I was telling about the overcrowding in the bus line, they had this problem in the South Shore and Brossard, and the bus had problem going to downtown because there was not enough space at the central station for all the buses. So it's a great addition to the Montreal networks, and the only downside will be maybe the financing part of how this is planned, and because it's a sort of private project.
Okay. What are your thoughts in regards to the promised expansion of the metro line?
Yeah, both principal party in the Montreal area, both one of Valérie Plante and the one from Denis Coderre, they both promises the same line extension, because at the end, it's not in the power of the city to create those lines. It's coming from the provincial government, who have the money, and also a little bit of money from the federal government. And so the good news is every single candidate were for those projects. So it's a good thing, because we need more public transit in the city, and we definitely need to extend the metro network, and those are great projects that we will do. But let's hope the government will approve those projects. Yeah.
And the need for the approval from the provincial government, this is kind of consistent with other things like the REM, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And what is kind of the process, or what does it take, whether, you know, the municipal government applying pressure on the provincial government to do these things? Like, what does it kind of look like?
If the municipal government were not we're not approving those projects, and we're not pushing from it, maybe the provincial government will not be as will not want to do it. because they need to see that the population want them. So the municipal government is there to remind the provincial government, we want those projects, we need them. So yeah, their role is essential.
Okay. And I mean, what are your thoughts on free transit? Do you think it's possible? You know, I don't know, in this term or in just in general, the future of Montreal?
It's definitely possible. You have a few cities already in the Quebec province who have a free public transit. I know Mont-Tremblant city in the Laurentides it's already the case, already free. So and some other few small city in the provinces have already put free public transit. It's because those are small towns, so there were already few people who took the bus. So removing like a few dollars from like 3 tickets selling, it doesn't make a big difference. So it was easy to them to make it free. For Montreal, we have a lot of people paying tickets, and I think half the budget of the STM currently come from the tickets. So if you made it free, you have to find the financing somewhere else. It could be a new tax at the provincial level or a new tax at the municipal level, but someone somewhere will have to pay that. But it's definitely possible. It's just a political choice. So, yeah.
And how do you think free transit is ultimately beneficial for Montrealers or tourists, anything like that?
It's a good thing because it's more equitable. If everybody have free public transit, they can use it whenever they want. Currently, you have this problem of people who don't take public transit every single day, you know, so they can't buy the monthly pass, and because of that, the buying a single ticket could be a disincentive. You know, they don't want to do it. So if it's free, more people will say, "Oh, let's take the metro. It will be free." And for the low income, it will be much more easier to take the public transit. Plus, let's not forget that if the public transit is free, you won't need those STM cops that harass people, you know, so it's a great thing to do. It's just a political choice. You need to find the money somewhere else.
Yeah. On the note of STM cops, in July, they actually gained constable status, so they can make arrests, they can access police databases. Do things like this kind of make you afraid or just concerned?
Yeah, it goes a little bit over my knowledge about my study in public transit, but you definitely shouldn't find more reason for cops to harass people. You know, they should concentrate themselves on really important matter and not people who don't pay $3 tickets.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Are there any last thoughts or critiques you want to share today?
I think there's great potential with the public transit in Montreal. We definitely should extend the metro networks and the REM network also in the suburbs. But inside Montreal, we should go with the tram network. There's a tram project with the pink line up to La Chine. It's now becoming a tram project. And I think we should use this first line as the beginning of a new tram network to replace those overcrowded bus line we have in Montreal. Right now in the north of Montreal, on Henri Bourassa, you have a Metrobus project, a kind of a BRT project. And it's a great thing, but I think a tram will be better. It have a greater capacity and it attract people. You know, people love trains. It's just better than buses, more attractive. And I think we should go this way in the next year.
These are kind of this proposal is kind of similar to the free ones in the city center of Melbourne. Isn't that right? Yeah. Yeah, those are pretty popular. I hear all these good things about them. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
So what is the connection between gentrification and transit hikes? Jean Lalonde, the coordinator from the Welfare Rights Committee of the Southwest Montreal, an advocacy group for people on welfare, which is also part of the Coalition for Social Fair and Public Transit, tells us. Let's see the clip.
Gentrification is one of the reasons why a social fare in public transit has become necessary. I mean, that's one of the reasons, because people need to use public transit more than they used to, let's say 20, 30 years ago, or when the metro was first started and all this, because back in the days, people could find affordable stores in their neighborhood. Their family, relatives were also in the neighborhood. A lot of people also worked within walking distance. I mean, all these things, government agencies, there were more offices. So there's plenty of things where that people could find in their own neighborhood. And because of gentrification and because of services being merged outside of the community, people being scattered by gentrification, there's more of a need now to use public transit more often than there used to be. And at the same time, the cost of public transit has increased over the years faster than inflation. I think it was a double or triple the rate. And at the same time, the basic benefit of a able-bodied or welfare recipient is half it's worth half of what it was at the in 1969. And add to that, another thing that comes with gentrification is the increase in rents, which is way above inflation. So disposable income, typically for a person who has the basic benefit and is in a private housing, probably in a room or a 3.5 or whatever, the disposable income is a tiny fraction of what it used to be. And at the same time, the bus ticket that used to be, let's say, I don't know, I think was 18 cents in 1966, costs $3.50 today. That would be, if it had been indexed, it would be $1.39. But then people's welfare check of $7.08 would be double. So you see, like, all the numbers have changed. Gentrification is a part of that. It's not the only factor, but it's definitely part of it. People have to walk and carry their grocery without taking the bus or the metro, and they have their children with them. Or people tell us, like they cannot, for example, they cannot see their parents. They have to manage how often they can. One of our members, she could not go see her father in the hospital because had to do it very sparingly because could not afford the fare. I mean, when it's people we know, we can help with that, but otherwise, a lot of people visiting their parents, keeping in touch with their friends when they've been moved outside of their community because of gentrification, because of repossession, because of rent increases, and so on. So there's a big impact for people. It's an impact also for workers on low income, not just welfare recipients, because the share of public transit as a percentage of disposable income becomes a big factor. Especially if you're going to work on low income or you're going to work at $13.50, maybe you get something part-time, you have to factor in the cost of public transit in there. So there's all kinds of ways in which it impacts people.
Are fare hikes making our city less affordable? Let's take a look.
A lot of things also are made available or offered for free to citizens, but people who cannot afford public transit cannot avail themselves of it, like bringing the family for free entertainment or free activities downtown. But while these things, they're free for people with money, but for people who cannot afford the bus fare or already spend their budget for public transit in a month, well, that's not available to them. So yes, so the increase is very significant. You can imagine like a round trip, of if $6.50. Well, if you have a check of $700, or sometimes less, if people have a debt to welfare or something like $600, it's not uncommon to pay, if you're in private housing, to pay $500 or more, $550. If you have a disposable income of $150 or $100 or even less, that's for everything else. So you can imagine. A single, a round trip at $6.50 or $3.50 or $3.75 may not sound like it's much, but it is. And that's why the decrease to $1 for a single ticket for seniors is a welcome improvement. But Projet Montreal's position was to implement a social fare in their platform, not the last election, but the previous one, a social fare based on income, and which would provide a rebate for people on low income that would be similar to that of seniors. And they haven't done that, actually. All the costs are going up for people on low income. And it's nice that they improved a lot of seniors and the free fare for children, but people on low income are still waiting, and then they're in dire need, and it's getting worse all the time.
In 2017, part-time Concordia professor and urban planner Jason Prince called on the newly incoming Projet Montreal to provide free transit. While they've lowered fares for some groups, overall fare has increased. Let's hear what he thinks about transit promises during Projet Montreal's second term.
Here's the trick. The provincial government sets the structures, right? And about 4 months before Projet Montreal was elected in the 2017 election, the provincial government restructured the public transit system in the Montreal region, creating something called the ART-M. A few months before, I can't remember exactly what date, but effectively what that means is that the city of Montreal, which used to have a very direct influence over the STM, and a great deal of power over the STMs, because the power to decide on fares was taken away from the STM and given to ARTM, a regional body, the city of Montreal no longer had the power, in fact, to do that. So the promises that were made in 2017 were no longer, in fact, a city of Montreal power. I'm not making excuses for Projet Montreal, but it's not something that the municipal, the Montreal City Council has any direct power over anymore. It's been depoliticized, is what the language we use is, because RTM has a board which is defined by the provincial government. I haven't looked exactly into who appoints it, whether the city of Montreal has any power to appoint people there, but it's definitely much more now a matter of influence rather than direct power. So, and also the other thing is that the ARTM set about reorganizing the fare structures in the Montreal region. So 2 or 3 years ago, there were over 200 different fares in the Montreal region. So we had CITs, and we had Société de Transport Laval in Montreal. STM, of course, was the biggest transport authority in the Montreal region. It still exists as a structure, but now they're all coordinated by this ARTM. What Quebec was looking to do was to follow the good lead, I think, of other like other large cities in Canada, notably Vancouver and Toronto, in trying to put a bit more order into the public transport system. In my opinion, the structure they put in place, in Montreal and Quebec, in the Montreal region, doesn't do the job. Not only is it a bad structure compared to the one in Toronto or the better one in Vancouver, not only is it a foolishly thought out structure, I hate to use that word, but on top of that, the provincial government, in their great wisdom, created new laws to allow the Caisse de dépôt to run a completely different planning structure in the middle of the ARTM's job of trying to organize public transport in the region. We have the REM, first from the west, and now the REM from the east, given to a private corporation, our pension fund, in fact, which is now building we've all seen the sticks they've been building, and they've got robots putting together this driverless electric thing, which is really, after all the dust settles, is not going to help public transport. It's not going to help existing residents move around more efficiently in the region. It's really going to help a bunch of villages along the threads. It's going to increase the land values around those stations, and it's going to and it's really much more about a real estate development than it is about public transport solutions. And after all the dust settles, the cost of building the REM is now going to have to be partly shouldered by the users in the entire transportation network. So here we have a very complicated problem. Trying to get free public transport in this context, asking the city of Montreal to play a role in that is certainly a much more complicated question than it was 4 years ago. I'll just draw attention to one interesting difference between Vancouver and Montreal, is that in Vancouver, last time I checked, gas is taxed and the money goes directly to the public transit system. And the tax that they pay over there is 17, I think it might be 17 cents or it might be 17%, double check that. I hope it's 17% because as price of gas goes up, then so does the amount of money that goes to the public transit system. If it's 17 cents, then as the price of gas goes up, the amount stays the same. So it's a good idea to always use percentages when because it costs the same. Like the public anger at any taxes is going to be more or less the same, whether it's 17 cents or 17%, correct? Now, the last time I checked, and it's been a couple of years now, the last time I checked, the tax from gas that goes to pay for the public transit system here is about 3 cents. And I checked that about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I'm hoping that, in fact, that goes up. But what that suggests is that there is a lot of what we call tax room. If Montrealers are going to be treated fairly, taxed fairly compared to their friends over there who live in Vancouver, they should be taxed 17 cents. Of course, there's a lot of space here for additional revenue to come from drivers. And everybody's been saying that's what we should be doing, is making sure that here's the big game. If you're playing I'm not talking about the radical political solution. If you're playing the liberal game, the middle of the road game, then you're playing the pricing strategy game. And what we want to do is we want to try and make it more expensive to do bad things and less expensive to do good things, right? Bonus malus. Encourage people who are doing good things and make it cheaper for them to do those good things. So public transport should be cheaper and driving a car should be more expensive. And when you buy a car, if you buy a gas guzzler, it should be more expensive than buying a little one that uses a little bit of gas, or it should be even less to buy an electric car. The taxes should be higher on the gas guzzlers. So if we were to set up a master framework for the ecological city going forward, using a liberal model, we would tax bad things and we would make it much cheaper to do good things. Okay, that should be the master public policy instrument in the city of Montreal going forward. All right, in my opinion. And so the ultimate move in that game then is to make public transport free, especially coming out of the pandemic. So now, how do we do that? The city of Montreal would have to stand up on its soapbox and shout it, and we would have to mobilize the public, the 70% of their voters. I think it's something like 70% of the people who vote in the city of Montreal use public transport on a pretty regular basis. That's a lot of people. And that's a lot of people who would benefit if it was free. So if the city of Montreal were to be serious about this, it would try and mobilize those people. The city of Montreal would actually actively mobilize. So, I mean, this has been my pet peeve.
Ultimately, as Jason highlighted, the goal for many is free transit. But starting out with the social fare is our segue to get there. So what is a social fare? Let's look at what Jean had to say on this.
I've mentioned how things have changed. The need for access to public transit before years ago was not an issue. I mean, people did not need it as much, and when they did need it, it was a small fraction of their income, even for people on very low income. That's not the case anymore. So an issue has arisen that wasn't there before around the right to mobility, because in order to access all the other rights, you have to be able to get around, to get to places. And that has become an issue, not just in Montreal, but in a number of cities. And that's why similar campaigns and movements exist in lots of cities, and some of which actually started implementing some measure of social tarification. So that's an issue that has appeared. In order to be able to have a right to get around, le droit de se déplacer, a right to mobility, in order to access other rights, you need three things. You need the means of transportation to be accessible to you physically. That's why we have transport adapté and measures to make transport more accessible physically, you need the buses and the metro, whatever, or the trains, whatever, to run so you can take them. So you need the service. But the third thing you need to be able financially to get in. The ideal solution would be free public transit as a essential public service, and that's the long-term perspective that we have in mind. But I would say, but our members thought that one place to start, at very least, would be to give the same reduction to people on low income that is already given to seniors, for example. So, and that's why our demand is for a similar reduction, which up until recently was 40% of the total cost. Now it's 50% for seniors, but even at 40%, a reduction on all titles, because people on welfare, many cannot buy a monthly pass. So the single ticket is very important for that reason. So again, the same reduction on all the titles, and for people who on low income, the broadest definition of low income would be the measure of the low income cutoff at 60% of the median income after tax. Okay, so you would say roughly, when we establish that, we figure somebody who works at $15 an hour full time would be in that range.
Thank you.
So it's for people on welfare, it's for people in similar situations, for a lot of unemployed people, and for low-income workers as well. There's even free public transit, you know, in Tallinn, in Estonia, free public transit. There's our model in Canada. I mean, it was Calgary who was the pioneer in terms of social fare. They have a sliding scale. I don't know what the amounts are right now, but I know at some point, I don't know if it's still the case, it was for the lowest income, you had a $5 pass, I think, and it's a sliding scale based on income. Gatineau has introduced a form of social fare. Some are, and there are other countries where there are different measures. There's also in Quebec, we're part of a Quebec-wide coalition, Coalition Nationale pour la Tarification Sociale du Transport, with groups in Quebec City, in Mauricie, the Trois-Rivières region, in Montérégie, in Lanaudière, in Rimouski-Neigette. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone, but Trajectoire Québec is part of it too. And so there are campaigns in other Quebec municipalities. I mentioned about Gatineau, who introduced a form of social tarification. I don't know if he will make good on his commitment, but the mayor of Trois-Rivières, who got reelected, said that he wanted to implement a social fare for public transit. So that's an example here, and part of a series of measures to address. That's not just poverty issues, but also the manpower shortage. Because if people can afford to get places, that's part of bringing relief also to the manpower shortage, because that's of course a factor as well. So yes, so there you have it. There's another places. I think it's an idea whose time has come. Many municipalities are considering it, or looking at it, or have started doing it, or have movements pushing for it, because what I described about Montreal, the situation in Montreal, how it changed, the same could be said pretty much throughout major cities in North America and in Europe, in Western Europe at least.
So how can we mobilize to get a social fare and ultimately get free transit?
The cost for students is like really expensive. For just one like if you just take one bus, it's like $2 or something, and it's too much.
Why do you think it's too much?
Like for students, we don't have a lot of money, so like you can't just spend like $5 just to take the bus and the metro to go to.
Apologies for the tech issues. Here's the clip.
Let's take the railway, for instance. The Canadian government just on its own authority, there are ways to be partners. All right, it's not.
The cost for students is like really expensive. For just one like if you just take one bus, it's like $2 or something, and it's too much.
active at the municipal level, of course, and I would say even locally. I mean, your local borough council, borough mayor, district councillor, and all that must be made aware of this and not allowed to forget about it. I mean, that's what we did. I mean, these representations, sometimes meeting elected officials, but also at times it includes campaigns with whether it's petitions or actions, mobilizations, talking to the media as we're doing now, as I'm doing now, all these things. We find at the beginning the biggest concern, and it's not something that's completely done yet, is there's a need to make the general public aware of the issue. It's a new issue. Not everybody and not all elected officials also are really aware of this, because it's not such a problem for a lot of people, especially not for. And it's a recent problem. The way that is, the way that it plays out today is something rather recent. So we have to make the problem known. So that's one thing, of course, and we did it through at the municipal level, and the result of that was that in the previous election, the next to last municipal election, we started out with the question being completely unknown in general. And even Projet Montreal not being sympathetic to it at the beginning, because the idea at the time was that money should go into improving service rather than reducing the fare, because that would be a more efficient way to help with the environment, to promote using public transit. But we kept at it, and Projet Montreal evolved towards a position where it became part of their platform to promote a social fare. And Kodak at the time also spoke out as early as 2013 in support of a social fare. And after the election, actually that led to, it led to a committee. Even before the previous election, we had a joint committee with STM to look into the question of the MTPA. And so we were looking at very concrete scenarios, how that could actually work. But in the meantime, the Quebec government changed the governance of public transit for the Montreal region, and they created the ARTM, l'Agence Régionale de Transport Métropolitain, which took over from the STM, not the organization of public transit, but the fare structure and that side of things. So it's a larger structure that includes the community, the CMM represented in the Montreal region, but also a number of regional transit authorities. So from that point on, it was not in the hands of the STM or Montreal anymore, and our representation had to turn towards the ARTM. And when they finally completed their overhaul of the fare system, they said, well, public social fare, they're going to look at perhaps next year. But they said also that it was worked out in such a way that regional transit authorities had the liberty of putting some of their own money or some municipal money to go beyond the common fare structure of ARTM. And that's what Montreal did. With the seniors, the further reduction for seniors down to 50% from 60%, from 40%. I mean, up from 40% to 50% reduction, and free for children. Well, that was on their own initiative, using using extra budget. When Laval made it free for seniors, that's what they did too. So now Montreal has the freedom to, as the option of doing that. Whether they have the money, I mean. Of course, that's usually the problem that is raised, but they found the money for other categories of people. So it's a long answer, but I would say we do these things at the regional level, at the very local level, because, but also at the Quebec level, because it's become an issue in a number of municipalities, and that's why we created this Quebec-wide coalition as well, because we think it's an issue for all of Quebec society. The right to mobility is a necessary means to meeting other rights, to availing for people to access other rights. And so it has become an issue, a social issue, une question de société. It has become and for that reason, We promoted that during the municipal elections, and we made some progress to the point where there's official commitment for social tarification, but no implementation. And we think the issue will remain current and must be addressed in the next provincial election campaign also, because obviously whatever municipalities decide to do, Quebec has a role also in terms of ensuring people's right to mobility.
Thank you so much.
So you see how people can get involved. There will be more campaigning. There will be more, perhaps petitions or other means or actions, but also representations, also interventions in local election campaign, for example, whether it's or talking to their municipal elected officials, but also provincial, also and beyond. Why we're asking what we ask for and all this, it really comes from what people felt they need and what they consider is achievable. Because if it can be done for others, it could be done for them. If buses can ride, like somebody was telling us, like if she can walk, she walks in the snow with her groceries, with her kids, she sees a bus like 3/4 empty, just run by, and she cannot take it. Otherwise, it means less milk for the children. Well, there's also a sense that it shouldn't have to cost that much also, because, like welfare recipients, it's not like they being able to access public transit. It might mean a bit more user, but it would not be a huge pressure on the system, and the cost would be marginal. And we saw that when we took a closer look in a joint committee with STM. We saw that we're not talking about something extravagant. So there's that is important to know. And I think you were asking what people can do. I think we have a shared responsibility to make as many people as possible aware of the issue. It's just something that's not everybody. A lot of people are sensitized to the issue of I don't know, like welfare benefits being too low to meet the cost of rent and the need for social housing and all these things. But access to transport is not something you hear as much about. It's not something you hear a whole lot about, and it needs to be noticed and talked about, I think, a lot more than it is right now. And that's a big part of what we need in order to get there, of course.
Back in 2012, during the student strikes, we had the Carré Rouge. And I've always thought that the free public transport movement should steal the Carré Vert from those students who used it then to say, education, I have the right to go to school and my teachers work for me. And then they wore this green square. There were only like 10 of them that wore a green square. I think we should take that symbol away. And the city of Montreal, if it's going to go and try and fight for free public transit, it should start to mobilize its citizens. And it should start to hand out green squares as the symbol for free public transit, and get everybody in the city, mobilize its public service, get a bunch of people on the job of going to the metros and handing them out and saying, I work for the city of Montreal. Do you want free public transit? Well, then wear this square. Boom. And we show the city, we show the province that the people in Montreal want this, and that it's the right direction. And if the city of Montreal were to take on were to be the first large city in the world to have free public transport, that would cost probably in the neighborhood of, I mean, the STM would, first of all, the federal government has already bailed out the public transport systems across the country with large amounts of money. 600 million, I think, was how much Montreal got from both the province and the federal government so that the STM could continue to function during the pandemic. That money should be guaranteed forever. It should become a federal and a provincial responsibility at that level. We're talking hundreds of millions, if not more, to make sure the public transport system operates. And that, by the way, covers a good deal of the revenue that was coming from the users. So we're getting close to making it possible to imagine free. Okay, so we have maybe more taxes dedicated from car drivers. We tap into the so-called green fund, which the CAC has proposed to use to fund their third link. And that's nonsense. The Green Fund comes from a cap and trade revenue and is dedicated to climate change. So that fund exists and it's got billions of dollars in it last time I checked. So the money is around for a big rollout of free public transport. We're waiting for one big city. Paris studied it very seriously a couple of years ago. They didn't go through with it. We're now waiting for a city like the size of Montreal to make a big announcement. And that would put Montreal on the map internationally. After the failure in Glasgow, it looks like it's going to be a complete failure. The cities now are going to have to start thinking, how are we going to do this? And the citizens in the cities are going to have to rise up and say, we need to make some really big changes in the way we organize space and the way we fight climate change. And in Quebec, it's absolutely it's number one. It's our addiction to the car. That's the source of greenhouse gases in the Montreal region, and we need to kill it. So let's take that. We got to take the gloves off now, and we've got to really offer drivers an alternative. Buy all the secondhand buses in North America that are going to get sold off as people electrify. Buy those buses and mobilize triple the amount of buses circulating in Montreal, right? Really, something big and not too expensive, something big that gives people a real alternative, and then bring in bring in the carrots and bring in the sticks and really try and change the city, change how it moves. I would love to see that. I think it's possible, but it's going to take leadership from the city of Montreal that immobilizes the citizens.
So what does the public think of transit in the city? Local 514 spoke to people on the streets of Montreal. Let's hear what they had to say.
The cost for students is really expensive. For just one if you just take one bus, it's $2 or something, and it's too much.
Why do you think it's too much?
For students, we don't have a lot of money, so you can't just spend $5 just to take the bus and the metro to go to downtown, which with the Concordia bus, it's free. So why would you take public transport when you have it for free? But yeah.
Since there's no metros nearby, you have to take a bus to a metro, and then if you don't live near a metro yourself, that's another extra 30 minutes to your transport to get here. So it's kind of difficult. Personally, it takes me about 75 minutes to get home. So it's it's not ideal. I have to wake up 2 hours before class to get here and get ready and stuff. So there's issues. I mean, it's unrealistic to have direct transport from wherever everyone lives. But if there was a metro nearby, it would definitely make it a lot easier for most people. Also, there would probably be less people taking their cars here, stuff like that.
Do you have issues per se with the costs maybe? Is the cost fine? You live in Montreal, right?
I live in Montreal, so the cost, not so much. I have an Opus card. It's only $50 a month, and unlimited transport to get here and come back and go back home every day. So not really an issue with the cost, but the time is the more prevalent issue there.
Where do you live?
I live in Tanamount Royal.
I don't know Montreal, so
it's kind of in the middle of the island, but there's no metros nearby there. So, and there's also no buses, so it takes me 30 minutes to walk to the metro, and then I have to take the metro to Snowden, and then I take a bus from Snowden to get to here.
So is that really accessible, you would say? If there's a lack of accessibility in terms of
a little bit, since there's no metros nearby here. The metro I get off at is all the way at the Carey.
And are you worried about the winter coming up?
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a problem. That's probably gonna add another 15 minutes, 20 minutes to my travel. I haven't done it yet. I'm not excited. Yeah.
Okay. In terms of maybe what things you have noticed in terms of like other people, not just you. Maybe like people with disabilities or older people or like whatever. Just other factors that don't affect you that you have just noticed. Would you say there is anything that you would call a challenge to, like, apart from things you have mentioned for yourself, so like other people, that you have noticed while being on public transit in Montreal?
I mean, the metro is kind of tough for people that are paralyzed, stuff like that. You know, now they're starting to implement elevators, but before that, like, I can imagine it's very problematic to go down an escalator. But other than that, I haven't noticed much. The buses, you know, they do the thing where they lean to let people on. So, I mean, I think in that regard, they're moving forward. So.
But
yeah.
that's in Montreal, though, I would say, because like living outside of Montreal, this is not like a situation for everyone. Like personally, almost every bus I have to take, there's like a couple of stairs to go, like to
onto the bus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, especially because I live in Blainville, so the buses are like different. So like it's really not accessible, I would say, for people like in Blainville. But I can talk about that because I don't live in Montreal. But yeah, like I also feel like it's kind of delayed, you know, because this should have been a thing a long time ago. Because like personally, I only have to carry like heavy stuff, like up the stairs and all that, and I'm just like someone in a wheelchair or like crutches. You know, how are they supposed to?
Yeah, they're not going to be able to. Yeah, you're 100% right. I never take public transport outside of Montreal, so I don't run into those issues. But I know like there are a lot of students here that don't live on the island, and they probably do. So for those students, yeah, they could definitely be an issue.
Could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Alex Kaloyanis. This is my first semester here.
Oh.
Yeah.
What are you studying?
I study biology. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. She's just gonna take down your name so that we get the
What's your
spelling
last
right.
name?
Kaloyanis.
Could you spell it for me, please?
Kaloyanis.
L-O-Y-A-N-N-I-S. Yeah. Perfect.
Awesome.
I think that at night there should be more buses available, just because I understand that the like transportation and need for transportation goes down at night, but there are people working night shifts and people who, you know, don't want to wait 30-40 minutes for the bus. So I think that having buses even more at night, and then even having things like I understand like the bus system is all in French, and luckily I speak French, but some people don't. Some people can't read the signs, some people can't even communicate with the bus driver. So having people that can speak English, I think would be helpful as well. I would say that the bus fare is a bit expensive when you don't have an Opus card. I think it's like $3.25, and I mean, a lot of people don't carry around change a lot too, so people that need to take public transportation don't even have exact change on them a lot, and having exact change is kind of unrealistic to ask of people who want to take public transport. So I think either accepting more or like less change, or not accepting, or being able to accept like not exact change would be better.
Perfect. And do you have anything you would like to add, maybe things you've noticed?
I think that making it more apparent, I've seen signs on the bus that there's, I think bus times that run for specifically women at night, and I think that should be advertised more, because I think a lot more women could benefit from that, because going out at night in the city is horrifying for a lot of women out there. Yeah, I'd say that as well.
Nous, en tant que tel, on prend le train comme transport en commun, et il y a ses avantages et ses désavantages. Le désavantage que je pourrais commencer à dire, c'est vraiment à propos des heures, du fait que comme des fois on a une heure d'attente entre, mettons, si on veut prendre le train avant 9h, si on veut prendre le train à 9h dans le fond, ça va débarquer juste à la gare Parc au lieu de continuer jusqu'à Montréal-Ouest. Il y a des arrêts de station également. Le prix aussi est quand même assez élevé, là. On parle de 108$ par mois. Déjà que ça a diminué le prix à la base. Parlant de C'est ça, j'ai parlé des heures, les handicapés ont accès au train, ont accès à des certains sièges spécifiques pour eux, ce qui est assez bien. Et ouais, ils ont une certaine façon de rentrer, il y a des sièges spécifiques pour eux, ça c'est bien pour le train. Pour le métro, je sais aussi qu'il y en a, mais un peu moins que dans le train. Sur vraiment les désavantages du train, c'est avec les heures. Des fois, c'est un peu compliqué, il faudrait... C'est ça. L'avantage du train, ça serait plus le mode, l'environnement est plus tranquille, tu peux étudier un peu par toi-même, c'est plus silencieux, il y a un premier étage, deuxième étage pour genre plus être dans ta bulle, premier étage plus pour bavarder, jaser, social. Tandis que le métro, c'est vraiment beaucoup de monde, des fois tu peux même pas trouver des sièges disponibles pour le métro, donc ça ressemble à ça.
Ouais, je suis pas mal d'accord avec ce qu'elle dit.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Keep up to date with upcoming episodes by following Local 514 on YouTube and CUTV on Facebook. Leave comments or questions and we'll try our best to answer either during the episode or on upcoming episodes. You can also follow CUTV Montreal on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. See you next time.